Hi everybody, as you can see, we've been experiencing some technical difficulties. This comic book should get you up to date on our stories so far. The often told, untold story of Captain Underpants by George Beard and Harold Hutchins. Once upon a time there was two cool kids named George and Harold who were hep to the jive. Me too! But they had a mean old principal named Mr. Krupp who was mean. I'm all mad and stuff. So George and Harold hypnotized him with a 3D hypno ring. You will obey our every command. Okay. Then they accidentally made him think he was a superhero. You are now Captain Underpants. Okay. Look at me. I'm Captain Underpants. Ha 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 ha. But he escaped and ran off to fight crime. Cha-la-la. Rats. George and Harold ran after him. Hey, come back here. No way. Then one day he drank some superpower juice. Glug, glug, glug. Now he has superpowers and stuff. Look at me. I got superpowers and stuff. Aw, man. But if you think that's bad, it gets worse. Pay attention because this next part is important. The worst part is that whenever Mr. Krupp hears somebody snap their fingers, he turns into Captain Underpants. Cha-la-la. And whenever somebody splashes water on Captain Underpants' face, he turns back into mean old Mr. Krupp. Blah, blah, blah. In their last adventure, George and Harold got two new pets. A bionic hamster named Sulu, cool, and a pterodactyl named Crackers, awesome! Everything was cool until this brainiac named Melvin showed up. I'm telling, Melvin made a time machine made out of a purple potty. It looks like this. Anyways, George and Harold wanted to use the time machine, but Melvin had one rule. Don't use the time machine 2 days in a row. Okay, if you use it 2 days in a row, something very bad will happen. Okay! I mean it. Don't use it 2 days in a row. Okay. Seriously, don't use it 2 days in a row. Okay. Then, hey, let's use this thing 2 days in a row. Okay. And so, George, Harold, Crackers, and Sulu used the time machine 2 days in a row, and something very bad happened. What will happen next? Chapter 1, George and Harold. This is George Beard and Harold Hutchins. George is the skeleton on the right with the tie and the flat top. Harold is the one on the left with the t-shirt and the bad haircut. Remember that now. As you might remember from our last adventure, George and Harold had recently made the horrifying mistake of trying to pass through a synthetic time warp without letting the C2X906 Super BIM Flaminatrix drive of their Beeble Flux capacitating exhaustifier cool down, thus creating a sub-paradoxical dimensionalistic alternicon shift which opened up a hyper-googlophonic screen door into a sub-omnivating ultrazendicular bionanzonaflana marzipan. To put it in scientific terms, they screwed up. But don't get all freaked out because everybody looks like a skeleton. X-ray beams are a normal byproduct of interdimensional reality shifting. Don't worry, it'll probably clear up by the time you turn the page. See, what'd I tell you? George, Harold, and their loyal pets suddenly found themselves wishing that they had never set foot inside the petrifying purple potty that was about to send them on a journey into the horrifying abyss of the unknown. A journey that would probably spell impending doom for themselves and will most likely bring about the end of our civilization as we know it. But before I can tell you that story, I have to tell you this story. Chapter 2, Those Wacky Grown-Ups. It's been said that adults spend the first 2 years of their children's lives trying to make them walk and talk, say dada, and the next 16 years trying to get them to sit down and shut up. Phone bill, $629.41. It's the same way with potty training. Most adults spend the first few years of a child's life cheerfully discussing pee and poopies and how important it is to learn to put your pee-pee and poo-poo in the potty like big people do. But once children have mastered the art of toilet training, they are immediately forbidden to ever talk about poop, pee, toilets, and other bathroom-related subjects again. Such things are suddenly considered rude and vulgar and are no longer rewarded with praise and cookies and juice boxes. Pro-pee! Hooray for poop! Make poo, not war! Down with poop! No diarrhea in our school! Pee stinks! Ban poo! One day you're a superstar because you pooped in the toilet like a big boy, and the next day, you're sitting in the principal's office because you said the word poopy in American history class, which, if you ask me, is the perfect place to say that word. You're probably wondering, why would adults do that? Why would they encourage something one day and discourage it the next? The only answer I can think of is that adults are totally bonkers and should probably be avoided at all times. Perhaps you'll be lucky and find a small handful of grown-ups whom you can trust, but I'm sure we can all agree that you really have to keep an eye on most adults most of the time. Which is just what George and Harold did. Chapter 3, The School of Hard Knocks. Unfortunately, the adults at George and Harold School were anything but trustworthy. Take their principal, Mr. Krupp, for example. Mr. Krupp's wicked heart thrived on the teardrops of children. His very soul danced at the thought of crushing a child's spirit and dashing his or her hopes and dreams against the jagged rocks in never-ending despair. Each day, Mr. Krupp would stand at the doorway to his office, gleefully handing out detention slips to any child who was unfortunate enough to cross his putrid path, and for very minor infractions, too, such as smiling, breathing without permission, or smelling funny. Warning, principal's office. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here. Life is hard. Get used to it. As bad as Mr. Krupp was, most of the teachers in George and Harold School were even worse. Kick me, loser, dork, bedwetter, I eat paste, wide load. My mom dresses me funny, crybaby. Fortunately for George and Harold, their evil educators were not very intelligent. They could be outsmarted easily, and they often were. Push button to open door. Now, you might think that wasn't very sporting of George and Harold to try and outsmart dumb people, and perhaps you'd be right, but George and Harold were just trying to make the best of a bad situation. But unfortunately for George and Harold, their bad situation was about to get much, much worse. Push on butt to open door. Chapter 4, Purple Pottyville. After several intense minutes of orange flashing lights, X-ray beams, and lightning-infused electric whirlwinds, the purple potty finally stopped shaking and sputtering and came to a sudden halt. Thick yellow smoke poured from its glowing hot tailpipes as the grinding gears and coughing motors shifted into power-down mode. George and Harold had no idea what to expect. They were supposed to be perched high up on a prehistoric tree 65 million years ago in the Cretaceous period of the Mesozoic era. But as they stepped out of the plastic door of the purple potty, the boys were disheartened to find themselves in the middle of the school library, right where they had started. "What are we doing here?" asked Harold. "I don't know," said George. "Something must have gone wrong." Harold carefully tucked crackers back into his book bag, and the two boys looked around the brightly lit library. "Well, hello, boys," said the school librarian. "This is Banned Books Week. Would you like to expand your minds today?" No thanks," said George. "Hey," said Harold, "didn't you get fired in our last book?" "I don't think so," said the librarian. Said George. "I'm not feeling very good about this. Mommy has 2 Heathers." "Duh, not feeling good?" asked Melvin Sneedley, who had been struggling to comprehend the easy-to-read children's bestseller, Frankenfart versus the Bionic Barf Bunnies from Diarrhea Land. "Maybe you should go see the school nurse." "We have a school nurse?" asked George. "I thought we just had a box of Band-Aids and a rusty saw," said Harold. "Duh, of course we have a school nurse," said Melvin. "His office is right next to our 5-star gourmet cafeteria." George and Harold looked confused. Thanks," said George, "but we'll be okay." Chapter 5, Strangers in Paradise Lost. As George and Harold walked down the hallway of their school, they noticed that something seemed wrong, very wrong, but they couldn't figure out what it was. Miss Sandrup, the unbelievably crabby school secretary, passed by the boys and smiled kindly. "Why, hello, George and Harold," she said. "It's so good to see you two. Have a wonderful day." George and Harold looked at her suspiciously. What just happened?" asked Harold. "I don't know," said George, "but something strange sure is going on." George and Harold opened their locker and carefully put crackers and Sulu inside. "Shh, they're asleep," said George. "Good," said Harold. "They can take a nap while we get to class." On the way to their homeroom, George and Harold stopped to switch the letters around on the lunch menu sign. Today's menu: soy burgers, hot lime pie, apple juice. But just as they were finishing, their principal, Mr. Krupp, caught them red-handed. "Hey, Bubs," he said, "what are you kids doing out here?" George stammered. "You see, we were, Please eat my plump, juicy boogers," said Mr. Krupp, giggling with glee. "That's gotta be the funniest thing I've seen all day. You boys really crack me up. You're hilarious." Then, with a spring in his step, Mr. Krupp pranced away, whistling a merry tune. What just happened?" asked Harold. "Shh," whispered George. "Look." George pointed at 2 kids who were coming toward them reading a homemade comic book. The kid on the left had a t-shirt and a flat top. The one on the right had a tie and a bad haircut. "Please feel free to remember that now if you wish." It's us," whispered George. "How can they be us?" whispered Harold. "I thought we were us." Anarchy rules. George and Harold hid behind a trash can as their two lookalikes walked toward them. They stopped in front of the lunch menu sign and frowned. Then a devilish look came over their faces as they quickly began rearranging the letters. The strange boys snickered wickedly as they sneaked away from their prank. What just happened?" asked Harold. "I think I figured it out," said George. Chapter 6. The World According to George. "I think the purple potty brought us to some kind of strange backwards universe," said George. "No way," said Harold. "That kind of thing only happens in poorly written children's stories whose authors have clearly begun running out of ideas." "Here, I'll prove it," said George. The two friends walked to the cafeteria and took a whiff. "That's weird," said Harold. "It doesn't smell like dirty diapers, greasy dishwater, and moldy tennis shoes in here anymore. It smells like food." "Yep," said George. Next, the boys went to the gymnasium. "That's weird," said Harold. "Our gym teacher isn't fat anymore, and he's not being incredibly cruel to the non-athletic kids like he usually is." "Yep," said George. Finally, George and Harold stepped outside. "That's weird," said Harold. "All of our evilest and most terrifying enemies from the past have been miraculously transformed into good guys." "Yep," said George. Chapter 7. Getting Out of Town. George and Harold ran back to their locker. "Let's grab crackers and Sulu and get out of this crazy place," said George. "Good idea," said Harold. But when they opened the locker door, their two friends were missing. "Where the heck are crackers and Sulu?" cried George. "I don't know," said Harold. "Nobody else has the combination to our locker. Nobody else except..." "Our twins!" gasped George. Harold tried to shut their locker, but the door jammed on something. "What's that?" asked George. "Looks like a comic book," said Harold. He held it up and read the front cover out loud. At that moment, George and Harold began to get a dreadful sense of the horror they were up against. Chapter 8. The Preposterous Plight of Captain Blunderpants. Once upon a time, there lived two evil children named George and Harold. I'm bad as well. They had a very nice principal who went by the name of Mr. Krupp. "Hello, boys. Have a pleasant day." "Whatever. One day, George and Harold hypnotized Mr. Krupp. "You will obey us." "Yes, master." They made him think he was an evil villain. "You are now Captain Blunderpants." "All right." George and Harold made Captain Blunderpants do all sorts of evil things. "Steal us a video game system." "Okay." And Captain Blunderpants obeyed. "Steal us a big screen television." "Okay." Crash. "I'm so happy I could cry." "Me too." Uh-oh. Crash. Soon, George and Harold had the world's coolest tree house. "Do you boys need anything else?" "Yeah, how about pizza?" "Sure thing, masters." And so, crash. "Hold it right there, Captain Blunderpants. You've stolen TVs, jacuzzis, pop machines, massage chairs, and disco balls, but this time you've gone too far. You're under arrest for Grand Theft Pizza. You gotta catch me first." Zip. And the chase was on. Soon, Captain B was chased onto the freeway. When suddenly, "Oh no! Hey! Look out! Screech! Yeah!" Crash! The strange mixture of chocolate, peanut butter, and extra cheese combined to create a super powerful chemical reaction, sizzle sizzle, which gave Captain Blunderpants amazing superpowers. "I feel super! La la tra!" Then, "Here's your pizza, boys! Hey, where's a pineapple?" Crash! "Wow, just think of all the evil things we could do now. With Captain Blunderpants as our evil, superpowered slave, we'll be able to get away with anything. Soon the entire world will be ours. Mwah ha 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 ha." Epilogue. Oh, by the way, whenever Captain Blunderpants hears someone snap his fingers, snap, he turns back on Mr. Krupp. "Have a swell day." And whenever Mr. Krupp gets water on his head, he turns back into Captain Blunderpants. Grrr. Remember that now. Evil Treehouse Comics, LLC. Chapter 9. Not Without My Hamster and My Pterodactyl. "I think our evil twins made this comic book," said Harold. "They must have," said George. "The artwork is really bad, and I'm pretty sure they misspelled some words." "Let's get out of here," said Harold. "Not without crackers and Sulu," said George. George and Harold ran to a window and looked out. Then they saw their two evil twins sneaking home, carrying their beloved pets with them. "Sulu and Crackers have no idea what's going on," said George. "They think those two guys are us." "How in the world are we going to stop us?" asked Harold. Chapter 10. HYPNO-HORROR. George and Harold knew exactly where those evil twins had taken Crackers and Sulu, to the same place they would have taken them, their tree house. So our two heroes dashed home as fast as they could. Then they climbed up the treehouse ladder as quietly as they could. But when they peeked inside, they saw something that was 389 times worse than they ever could have imagined. Their evil twins were hypnotizing their beloved pets with a 3D hypno ring. "You will obey our every command," said Evil Harold. "Yeah," said Evil George, "and you'll be really wicked from now on, too." George and Harold gasped, which is actually not a very smart thing to do if you're trying to go unnoticed. "Hey, look!" shouted Evil Harold. "Gaspers! Get 'em!" shouted Evil George to their newly hypnotized pets. Crackers didn't move. The dazed pterodactyl shook his head and looked a little confused, but Sulu immediately sprung into action. He laughed at George and Harold, grabbed them by their shirts, and yanked them to the ground. "Hey," said Evil George, "those kids look just like us. What should we do with them?" "We can't take any chances," said Evil Harold. Then he called to Sulu in a loud and commanding voice, "Destroy them, oh wicked hamster!" Chapter 11, Crackers to the Rescue! Crackers did not understand what was going on, but the plucky pterodactyl knew that something needed to be done, and quickly. So with a sudden whoosh of flapping wings, Crackers swooped in and grabbed George and Harold from the relentless little paws of their raging robotic rodent rival. "Oh no!" screamed Harold. "Crackers is going to fly us high into the air and drop us! We're doomed!" "Actually, I think he's trying to rescue us," said George. "But he got hypnotized just like Sulu," said Harold. "Why on earth would he do the opposite of what he was ordered to do? And how come all of our pronouns are getting italicized?" asked George. "Let's not worry about that now," said Harold. "We gotta get out of here." "But we can't leave Sulu behind," cried George. "Don't worry," said Harold. "We'll come back for Sulu." So the three friends flew to the school and headed upstairs to the library. "Hey, that looks like a pterodactyl," said Mr. Krupp as our heroes pushed past him. "Let me pet him! Let me pet him!" Mr. Krupp cried, chasing after them. George, Harold, and Crackers finally reached the library just in time to see Sulu and their evil twins smash through the ceiling with a terrible crash. "You losers won't get away from us this time," said Evil Harold. Desperately, George, Harold, and Crackers tumbled into the purple potty, slammed the door shut, and quickly reset the controls. Crash! Mr. Krupp and Sulu pounded on the door of the purple potty while George and Harold's evil twins shook the malfunctioning time machine from side to side. All at once, an orange light started flashing wildly. The purple potty began to shake and wobble violently. Then the entire room lit up with an explosive burst of lightning as the purple potty and everyone around it disappeared into a whirlwind of electric air. Chapter 12, Kaplamski! Suddenly, there was another blinding flash of light. Everyone around the purple potty flew off in different directions. Then the purple potty stopped shaking and wobbling and switched into shutdown mode. George, Harold, and Crackers peeked out. "Look," said Harold, "there aren't any books in this library. We must be back in our own reality." "But we've got to be sure," said George. The two boys tucked Crackers into Harold's book bag and crept out into the hallway. As they peered into the windows of nearby classrooms, they saw room after room of heartbroken and despondent-looking children. Some were standing in corners, weeping. Others were sitting on dunce stools wearing humiliating hats, while still others were writing unbelievably degrading sentences over and over on the chalkboard as their teachers rifled through their lunch boxes, stealing all the best desserts. "My parents only pretend to love me. I apologize for being born. I'm so ugly. When I was born, the doctor slapped my mom. This will go on my permanent record. Dummy, Mr. Lice Guy, duh, I'm a stupid loser, dunce." "Yep," sighed George, "we're back in our own reality." "I never thought I'd say this," said Harold, "but it's good to be home." "To the tree house!" cried George.